This is a reading from the poem of Man God by Maria Valtorta, Volume 5, Episode 600, The Various Trials. It is a 28-page chapter, so I'll probably read about 10 pages at a time. It was written on the 16th of February, 1944. Jesus says, "You have by now become acquainted with all the sorrows that preceded the passion proper. I will now let you know the sorrows of my actual passion, those sorrows that affect your minds more when you meditate on them. But you meditate very little on them, too little. You do not consider how much you have cost me, and what torture your salvation involved. You complain of a scratch, of knocking against a corner, of a headache, but you do not consider that my body was one big sore, that those sores were envenomed with many things, that things themselves served to torture their Creator, because they tortured the already tormented God-Son, without any respect for Him who, Father of creation, had formed them. But things were not guilty. The guilty one was still and always man. Guilty since the day he listened to Satan in the earthly paradise. Things of creation up to that moment had no thorns, no poison, no cruelty for man, the chosen creature. God had made that man king. He made him in his own image and likeness, and in his fatherly love he did not want things to be insidious to man. Satan laid the snare in the heart of man, first of all, then, with the punishment of sin, it brought spines and thorns. So I, the man, had also to suffer things, and be grieved not only by people, but also by things. The former insulted and tortured me, the latter served as their weapons. The hand that God had made for man to distinguish him from brutes, the hand that God had taught man how to use, the hand that God had coordinated with man's mind, making it the executor of the commands of the mind, this part, which is so perfect in you, and which should have had nothing but caresses for the Son of God, by whom it had only been caressed and cured, if it was diseased, turned against the Son of God, and struck him with slaps and blows. It armed itself with scourges. It became pincers to tear hair and beard, and hammer to drive nails. Man's feet, which should have run nimbly only to worship the Son of God, were swift to come to arrest me, to push and drag me along the streets towards my executioners, and kick me in such a way as would be unfair even with a restive mule. Man's mouth, which should have used words, the endowment given only to man among all animals created, to praise and bless the Son of God, filled with curses and lies, and hurled them with its slaver at my person. Man's mind, the proof of his celestial origin, exhausted itself devising tortures of refined rigor. Man, the whole man, made use of himself in his individual parts to torture the Son of God, and he called the earth with its forms to assist him in torturing. Of the stones of torrents he made projectiles to wound me, of the branches of trees clubs to strike me, of twisted hemp ropes to drag me, cutting into my flesh, of thorns a crown of stinging fire for my tired head, of minerals an exasperating scourge, of a cane an instrument of torture, of the stones in the streets a snare for the unsteady foot of him who was going uphill, dying to die crucified. And the things of the sky combined with the things of the earth, the cold at dawn for my body, already exhausted by the agony in the garden, the wind that irritates wounds, the sun that increases parching thirst, and one's temperature and brings flies and dust, that dazzles tired eyes, which fastened hands cannot protect. And the fibers granted to man to cover his nakedness, combined with the things of the sky, with leather that becomes a scourge, with the wool of a garment that sticks to the sores made by the scourges, and causes a rubbing and lacerating torture at each movement. Everything served to torture the Son of God, he for whom all things had been created. In the hour in which he was the victim offered to God, had everything against him in a hostile manner. Your Jesus, Mary, had no comfort from anything. Everything that exists turned against me like fierce vipers, to bite at my flesh and increase my suffering. This is what you ought to think of when you suffer, and comparing your imperfection with my perfection, and my sorrows with yours, you ought to admit that the Father loves you, as he did not love me in that hour, and therefore you should love him with your whole selves, as I loved him, notwithstanding his rigor. The painful journey begins along the stony lane leading from the clearing, where Jesus was arrested, to the Kidron, and thence along another lane, to town, and gibes and torture begin at once. Jesus, his wrists and even his waist tied as if he were a dangerous madman, the ends of the ropes entrusted to energumens, intoxicated with hatred, is tugged here and there like a rag, abandoned to the rage of a pack of puppies. But if those who behave thus were dogs, they could still be excused. But they are men, although they only have the appearance of men. And it is to give him greater pain that they thought of tying him with two opposed ropes, one of which serves only to fasten his wrists, and it scratches and cuts into them with its coarse friction, and the other, the one around his waist, compresses his elbows against his thorax, and cuts into and oppresses his upper abdomen, torturing his liver and kidneys, where there is a huge knot, and where, now and again, those holding the ends of the ropes lash him with them, saying, "Gee up, away, trot, donkey," and they kick him at the same time, striking the back of the knees of the tortured one, who vacillates and does not fall on the ground, only because the ropes hold him up. But that does not prevent him from knocking against low walls and tree trunks, while he is tugged to the right by the man holding the rope fastening his wrists, and to the left by him holding the rope around his waist. And he falls heavily against the parapet as a result of a more violent jerk when crossing the little bridge on the Kidron. His bruised mouth is bleeding. Jesus raises his tied hands to wipe away the blood soiling his beard, but does not say anything. He is really the lamb that does not bite its torturer. Some people, in the meantime, have gone down to the gravel bed to get pebbles and stones, and from below, a shower of stones strikes the easy target. As progress is slow on the narrow, insecure little bridge on which people crowd, hindering one another, the stones hit Jesus' head and shoulders. They hit not only Jesus, but also his torturers, who react, throwing back sticks and the same stones. And it all serves to knock Jesus again on the head and neck. But they are soon on the other side of the bridge, and the narrow lane casts shadows on the fray, because the moon, which is beginning to set, does not illuminate the twisted lane, and many torches have gone out in the turmoil. But hatred acts as a light, to see the poor martyr, who is exposed to torture also because of his high stature. He is the tallest among all of them, so it is easy to strike him, to seize him by the hair, compelling him to throw back his head violently, and to fling on it handfuls of filthy stuff, which by force goes into his mouth and eyes, causing nausea and pain. They begin to go through the suburb of Ophel, in which he dispensed so much good and so many caresses. The shouts of the crowd awake people who rush to their doors, and while women utter cries of sorrow and run away struck with terror, seeing what is happening, men, who have also been cured and assisted and have received friendly words from him, men either lower their heads, remaining indifferent, simulating carelessness to say the least, or they pass from curiosity to hatred, to sneering, to threatening gestures, or they follow the procession to join in torturing him. Satan is already at work. A man, a husband who wants to follow him to insult him, is grasped by his howling wife, who shouts at him, "Coward, you owe him your life. You filthy man full of rottenness. Remember that." But the woman is overwhelmed by the man, who beats her in a beastly manner, throwing her on the ground, and then runs to join the martyr, whose head he strikes with a stone. Another woman, an old one, tries to obstruct the path of her son, who is rushing, looking like a hyena, and holding a stick to strike him, and she shouts at him, "As long as I live, you shall not be the killer of your Saviour." But the poor wretch is struck by her son with a brutal kick at the groin, and she collapses on the ground, shouting, "Deicide and matricide! May you be cursed for rending my womb for the second time, and for injuring the Messiah." The scene becomes more and more violent, the closer they get to the town. Before arriving at the walls, the gates are already open, and the Roman soldiers, fully armed, are observing where and how the tumult is evolving, ready to interfere should the prestige of Rome be injured. There is John with Peter. I think they have arrived there by a shortcut, which they have taken crossing the Kidron upstream of the bridge, and rushing ahead of the crowd, which is proceeding slowly, so much people are hindering one another. They are in the half-light of an entrance hall near a little square before the walls. They have covered their heads with their mantles to conceal their faces, but when Jesus arrives, John drops his mantle and shows his wan, upset face in the clear moonlight that still shines there, before the moon sets behind the hill which is beyond the walls, and which I hear is named Tophet by the hired ruffians who arrested Jesus. Peter dares not show his face, but he comes forward to be seen. Jesus looks at them, and he smiles with his infinite kindness. Peter turns round and goes back to his dark corner, covering his eyes with his hands, stooping, aged, already in very poor spirits. John remains bravely where he is, and only when the howling crowd has gone by he joins Peter. He takes him by the elbow and he guides him, as if he were a boy leading his blind father, and they both enter into the town, behind the clamoring crowd. I can hear the stupid, derisory, sorrowful exclamations of the Roman soldiers. Some of them curse as they had to get out of their beds because of that stupid blockhead. Some mock the Jews as being able to arrest a poor little woman. Some pity the victim whom they have always known to be kind. And some say, I would have preferred to die a violent death rather than see him in those hands. He is a great man. I have two objects of veneration in this world, him and Rome. By Jove, exclaims one of the highest rank, I don't want trouble. I'll go to the ensign. Let him inform who is to be informed. I don't want to be sent to fight against the Germans. These Jews stink and they are snakes in trouble, but life is safe here, and I am about to finish my military service, and near Pompeii I have a girl. I miss the rest as I follow Jesus, who proceeds along the streets that forms a bend uphill to go to the temple, but I see and realize that Annas' house, where they want to take him, is and is not in the labyrinthic aggregation which is the temple, and covers the whole of the Zion hill. The house is at its extremities, near a series of massive walls, which seems to be the boundaries of the town here, and from this place they stretch along the side of the mountain, with porches and yards, until they reach the enclosure of the temple, proper that is, where the Israelites go for their several celebrations of cult. A tall iron door opens in the massive wall. Some voluntary hyenas rush towards it and knock loudly, and as soon as the door is slightly opened, they burst inside, almost knocking down and trampling on the maidservant who had come to open it. And they open it wide so that the bawling crowd with the prisoner in the middle of them may go in. And as soon as they are in, they close and bolt the door, probably because they are afraid of Rome, or of the followers of the Nazarene. His followers, where are they? They go along the entrance hall, and then they pass through a wide yard, a corridor, another porch, and another yard, and they drag Jesus up 3 steps, compelling him almost to run along a porch built onto the yard, in order to arrive sooner at a richly furnished hall, where there is an elderly man wearing the robes of a priest. May God comfort you, Annas, says he who seems to be the officer, if the rascal who has been in charge of those brigands can be called so. Here is the culprit. I entrust him to your holiness, so that Israel may be cleansed of the sin. May God bless you for your sagacity and your faith. Fine sagacity. Jesus' voice has been enough to make them drop to the ground at Gethsemane. Who are you? Jesus of Nazareth, the Rabbi, the Christ, and you know me. I have not acted in darkness. No, not in darkness, but you have led the crowds astray with obscure doctrines, and it is the temple's right and duty to protect the souls of the children of Abraham. The souls, priest of Israel, can you say that you have suffered for the soul of the least or the greatest of this people? And what about you? What have you done that may be called suffering? What have I done? Why do you ask me? The whole of Israel speaks about me. From the holy city to the poorest village, even stones speak to say what I have done. I have given sight to the blind people, the sight of their eyes and of their hearts. I have opened the ears of deaf people to the voices of the earth and of heaven. I have made cripples and paralytics walk, so that they might begin marching from the flesh towards God, and then proceed with their spirits. I have cleansed lepers of the leprosy pointed out by the Mosaic law, and of that which makes man polluted in the eyes of God, sin. I have raised the dead, but I do not say that it is a great deed to call a body back to life, but it is a great thing to redeem a sinner, and I have done that. I have helped the poor, teaching greedy and rich Hebrews the holy precept of love for our neighbor, and, remaining poor, notwithstanding that a stream of gold passed through my hands, I have wiped more tears by myself than all of you who possess riches. And finally, I have given a wealth that has no name, the knowledge of the law, the knowledge of God, the certainty that we are all equal, and that in the holy eyes of the Father, tears and crimes are the same, whether they are shed or committed by the tetrarch and by the pontiff, or by the beggar and the leper who dies on the cart road. That is what I have done, nothing else. Do you realize that you are accusing yourself? You say the leprosy that makes one polluted in the eyes of God and is not pointed out by Moses. You are insulting Moses and are insinuating that there are some lacunae in his law. Not his, God's. It is so. more than leprosy, which is a misfortune of the flesh, and comes to an end. I declare grave, and it is so, sin, which is an eternal misfortune of the spirit. Do you dare say that you can remit sins? How can you do it? If with a little lustral water and the sacrifice of a ram it is lawful and credible to cancel a sin, expiate it and be cleansed of it, why will my tears, my blood, and my will not be able to do so? But you are not dead, so where is the blood? I am not dead yet, but I shall be, because it is written in heaven before Zion existed, before Moses existed, before Jacob existed, before Abraham existed, since the king of evil gnawed at the heart of man and poisoned it in him and in his children. It is written on the earth, in the book that contains the voices of the prophets. It is written in hearts, in yours, in Caiaphas's heart, in the heart of the members of the Sanhedrin who do not know, whose hearts do not forgive me for being good. I have absolved, anticipating through my blood. I will now accomplish absolution with a purifying bath in it. You say that we are greedy and we ignore the precept of love. Is it perhaps not true? Why are you killing me? Because you are afraid that I may dethrone you. Oh, be not afraid. My kingdom is not of this world. I leave you the masters of all power. The Eternal knows when to utter the enough that will make you drop thunderstruck. Like Doras, eh? He died of a fit of anger, not because he was struck by heavenly lightning. God was waiting on the other side to strike him. And you are repeating that to me, a relative of his? How dare you? I am the truth, and the truth is never cowardly. Proud and foolish. No, sincere. You accuse me of offending you, but do you all not hate? You hate one another, and now your hatred for me unites you. But tomorrow, when you have killed me, you will hate one another once again, and more fiercely, and will live with this hyena behind your backs, and this snake in your hearts. I have taught love, for the world's sake. I taught people not to be greedy, to have mercy. Of what do you accuse me? Of preaching a new doctrine. O priest, Israel is swarming with new doctrines. The Essenes have theirs, the Sadducites and the Pharisees have theirs. Everybody has his secret one, which for one is named pleasure, for another one gold, for another one power, and everybody has his idol. Not I. I have resumed the downtrodden law of my father, of the eternal God, and I have gone back to repeating the 10 Commandments of the Decalogue in a simple way, talking myself hoarse to make them enter the hearts that no longer knew them. Horror! Blasphemy! How dare you say this to me, a priest? Has Israel no temple? Are we like the exiles in Babylon? Reply to me. That is what you are, and even more. There is a temple, yes, a building, but God is not in it. He has fled before the abomination that is in his house. But why ask me so many questions, since my death has already been decided? We are not murderers. We kill if we have the right to do so for an evident fault. But I want to save you. Tell me, and I will save you. Where are your disciples? If you hand them over to me, I will let you go free. The names of all of them, and the secret ones more than the known ones. Tell me, is Nicodemus one of yours? And Joseph? And Gamaliel? And Eleazar? But with regard to this one, I already know. It is not necessary. Speak. Speak up. You know that I can kill you and save you. I am powerful. You are filth. I leave to filth the business of the informer. I am light. A bravo lands a blow in his face. I am light. Light and truth. I have spoken openly to the world. I have taught in synagogues and in the temple, where the Judeans meet, and I have said nothing secretly. I repeat it. Why do you ask me? Ask those who have heard what I have said. They know. Another bravo gives him a slap in the face, shouting, Is that how you reply to the high priest? I am speaking to Annas. Caiaphas is the pontiff, and I am speaking with respect due to the old man. But if you think that I have said something wrong, prove it to me. If not, why do you strike me? Leave him alone. I am going to Caiaphas. Keep him here until I tell you otherwise, and make sure he does not speak to anybody. Annas goes out. Jesus does not speak, not even to John, who dares to stay at the door, defying the crowd of hired ruffians. But Jesus, without saying a word, must have given him an order, because John, after a sorrowful glance, goes away, and I lose sight of him. Jesus remains with the torturers, blows with the ropes, spittle, insults, kicks. The tearing of his hair is what is left for him, until a servant comes to say that the prisoner is to be taken to Caiaphas's house. And Jesus, still tied and ill-treated, goes out again under the porch, walks along it as far as the lobby, and then passes through a yard in which many people are warming themselves near a fire, because the night has turned cold and windy in the early hours of Friday. Peter and John are also there, mingled among the hostile crowd, and they must be really brave to stay there. Jesus looks at them, and a faint smile appears on his lips, already swollen because of the blows received. A long walk across porches, halls, yards, and corridors. But what kind of houses did these people of the temple have? But the crowd does not go into the enclosure of the pontiff's house. It is pushed back into Annas' entrance hall. Jesus proceeds alone among bravos and priests. He goes into a large hall that seems to lose its rectangular shape because of the many seats placed in the horseshoe shape along three sides, leaving an empty space in the middle, beyond which there are 2 or 3 seats placed on platforms. When Jesus is on the point of going in, Rabbi Gamaliel arrives at the same time, and the guards give the prisoner a strong pull so that he may give way to the Rabbi of Israel. But the latter, as stiff as a statue, with a stately attitude, slackens his pace, and hardly moving his lips, without looking at anyone, he asks, "Who are you? Tell me." And Jesus kindly replies, "Read the prophets, and you will have the answer. They contain the first sign. The other one will come." Gamaliel gathers his mantle and goes in. Jesus enters behind him. While Gamaliel goes to one of the seats, Jesus is dragged to the middle of the hall in front of the pontiff, the true figure of a criminal, and they wait until the members of the Sanhedrin arrive. Then the session begins, but Caiaphas notices that 2 or 3 seats are vacant, and he asks, "Where's Eleazar, and where is John?" A young man, a scribe I think, stands up. He bows and says, "They refuse to come. Here is their letter. Keep it and make a note of it. They will answer for that. What have the holy members of this council to say with regard to this man?" "I will tell you. He infringed the Sabbath in my house. God bears witness that I am not lying. Ishmael ben Fabi never lies." "Is it true, defendant?" Jesus is silent. "I have seen him live with well-known prostitutes, feigning he was a prophet. He turned his haunt into a brothel, and with heathen women of all people. Zadok, Caliskabona, and Nahum, Annas' trustee, were with me, and I am telling the truth. Zadok and Caliskabona, give them the lie if I deserve it." "It is true, quite true. What do you say?" Jesus is silent. "He missed no opportunity to deride us and have us ridiculed. Common people no longer love us through his fault. Do you hear them? You have profaned the holy members." Jesus is silent. "This man is possessed. After he returned from Egypt, he was practicing black magic." "How can you prove it?" "On my faith and on the tables of the law." "A grave charge. Prove your innocence." Jesus is silent. "Your ministry is illegal. You know that, and liable to death. Speak up." "This session of ours is illegal. Stand up, Simeon, and let us go," says Gamaliel. "Rabbi, have you gone mad?" "I respect formulae. It is not lawful to proceed as we are doing, and I will make a public charge against it." And Rabbi Gamaliel goes out, as stiff as a statue, followed by a man about 35 years old who looks like him. There is a little turmoil, and Nicodemus and Joseph take advantage of it to speak in favor of the martyr. Gamaliel is right. The time and the place are illicit, and the charges are not consistent. Can anybody accuse him of having notoriously despised the law? "I am a friend of his, and I swear that I have always found him to be respectful of the law," says Nicodemus. "And I too, and in order not to assent to a crime, I cover my head not for him, but for us, and I go out." And Joseph is about to come down from his seat and go out, but Caiaphas shouts, "Ah, is that what you say? Then let the sworn witnesses come in, and listen to them. Then you will go away." Then 2 jailbirds come in. Elusive looks, cruel sneers, sly ways. "Speak up." "It is not lawful to listen to both at the same time," shouts Joseph. "I am the high priest. I give orders. Be silent." Joseph strikes the table with his fist and says, "May the fire of heaven fall upon you. As from this moment be aware that Joseph the elder is an enemy of the Sanhedrin and a friend of the Christ. And I am going at once to inform the praetor that a man is being sentenced to death here without the approval of Rome." And he rushes out, giving a violent push to a young thin scribe who would like to hold him back. Nicodemus goes out more calmly without saying a word, and when going out he passes in front of Jesus and looks at him. Another turmoil. They are afraid of Rome, and Jesus is always the expiating victim. "See, all this is happening through your fault, you corrupter of the best Judeans. You have prostituted them." Jesus is silent. "Let the witnesses speak," shouts Caiaphas. "Yes, he was making use of the we knew, what is the name of that thing? The tetragram, perhaps." That's it, you have said it. He evoked the dead. He taught people to rebel against the Sabbath and to desecrate the altar. We swear it. He said that he wanted to destroy the temple and rebuild it in 3 days with the assistance of demons. No, he said that it will not be built by man. Caiaphas comes down from his seat and approaches Jesus, small, excessively fat, ugly. He looks like a huge toad close to a flower, because Jesus, although wounded, bruised, dirty, and unkempt, is still so handsome and solemn. Are you not replying? What horrible charges they are bringing against you. Speak, to clear yourself of such shame. But Jesus is silent. He looks at him, but he does not speak. Reply to me, then. I am your pontiff. I adjure you by the living God. Tell me, are you the Christ, the Son of God? You have said it. I am. And you will see the Son of Man sitting on the right hand of the power of the Father, come on the clouds of the sky. Moreover, why do you ask me? I have spoken in public for 3 years. I have not said anything secretly. Ask those who have heard me. They will tell you what I have said and what I have done. One of the soldiers who is holding him strikes his mouth, making it bleed once again, and he shouts, Is that how you reply, O Satan, to the high pontiff? And Jesus replies meekly to this one as he had replied to the previous one, If I have spoken the truth, why do you strike me? If I have said something wrong, why do you not tell me where I am wrong? I tell you once again, I am the Christ, the Son of God. I cannot lie. I am the high priest, the eternal priest, and I alone wear the true rational, on which it is written doctrine and truth, and I am faithful to both, even to death, ignominious in the eyes of the world, holy in the eyes of God, and until the blissful resurrection, I am the anointed one, pontiff and king I am, and I am about to take my scepter, and with it, as with a winnowing fan, I will clear the threshing floor. This temple will be destroyed, and it will rise again, new and holy, because this one is corrupt, and God has abandoned it to its destiny. Blasphemer! They all shout in chorus. Will you do that in 3 days, you silly possessed man? Not this one, but mine will rise again, the temple of the true, living, holy, 3 times holy God. Anathema! They all howl again in chorus. Caiaphas raises his clucking voice. He tears his linen garments with affected horror, and he says, What else have we to hear from witnesses? He has blasphemed. So what shall we do? And all in chorus, He deserves to die! And with disdainful, scandalized gestures they go out of the hall, leaving Jesus to the mercy of the bravos and of the mob of false witnesses, who with slaps, blows, spitting, blinding his eyes with a rag, and then pulling his hair violently, drive him here and there with his hands tied, so that he knocks against tables, chairs, and walls, while they ask him, Who hit you? Guess! And several times they trip him, and make him fall flat on his face, and they split their sides with laughter, seeing how hardly able he is to stand up again, his hands being tied. Some hours go by so, and the tired torturers decide to have a little rest. They take Jesus to a closet, making him go through many yards among the insults of the mob already numerous in the enclosure of the pontiff's house. Jesus arrives in the courtyard where there is Peter near a fire, and he looks at him. But Peter escapes his notice. John is no longer there. I cannot see him. I think he has gone away with Nicodemus. Dawn is breaking, and the sky looks greenish. An order is given. The prisoner is to be taken back to the council hall for a more legal trial. It is just the moment in which Peter, for the 3rd time, denies that he knows the Christ, when the latter is passing by, already marked by sufferings. And, in the greenish dawn light, his bruises look even more dreadful on his wan face, and his eyes more sunken and glassy. A Jesus made dull by the sorrow of the world. A derisory, sarcastic, mischievous cock-crowing rends the air, just beginning to stir at dawn, and at this moment of deep silence, brought about by the appearance of the Christ, only Peter's harsh voice is heard to say, I swear it, woman, I do not know him. A resolute, decided statement, to which replies at once, like a sneer, the cheeky crowing of the cockerel.